Just when you thought the feminist takeover of our universities couldn't get any worse, now we have news that UTS in Sydney has decided to allow students accused of sexual assault or harassment to be judged by a panel of students and university staff. These four-person extrajudicial panels are going to be examining evidence, determining guilt, and can recommend to the Vice-Chancellor that the accused student should be expelled or their academic awards rescinded. Here's a panel that's not bound by rules of evidence and can inform itself on any matter it feels fit. This is a direct result of the failure of last year's fake rape crisis. Last year, our Human Rights Commission spent $1 million trying to prove there was a rape crisis on our campuses. The result was simply overwhelming evidence that our campuses are really safe places for most young women who are genuinely only at risk of unwanted staring. But the feminists haven't given up on their end goal. These social warriors are frustrated that juries so rarely convict in date rape cases where it's really difficult to sort out contradictory stories between the accused and the accuser. So they're encouraging universities to play judge and jury in such cases in the hope of punishing more young men accused of such crimes. They'd love to see the type of on-campus tribunal system which is currently operating on US campuses, where so many men are being wrongly accused and forced out of university. The Trump administration is making moves to wind back this crazy system, which is costing the universities a fortune in lawsuits from these young men and their families. You might like to read the article I've written about all this. See the low bar below the video. Now, funnily enough, one of our papers, the Daily Telegraph, reported the story about UTS just as we were putting together our latest video involving a student who's accused of sexual assault at Adelaide University and also being investigated by a student committee. I've been in contact with the student for the last 8 months since he was first accused. His story provides extraordinary evidence of just where all this dangerous nonsense is actually heading. He's joining me today. I'm going to call him David. That's not his real name, and we're disguising his voice. He's recently left the university, which is why he feels he can now talk about what happened to him. He hopes this ghastly business is all behind him, but it pays to be careful. Just one point. The Adelaide Committee in question is the Student Behaviour and Conduct Committee, which, unlike the one at UTS, doesn't include any student members. At the time we filmed this interview, I was a bit confused about that, partly because the student affairs officers who handled the communication with David simply signed their first names and never spelt out the fact that they were on staff. But the fact remains that universities have no business taking on investigations of potentially criminal matters. Well, welcome, David. I'm really pleased to have you here.
Thank you, Bettina, and thank you for everything you do.
I just think it's a really important story that people need to know about, but it's been a pretty ghastly time for you, I imagine.
Right, definitely. So I've been through a lot since last year, and I'm glad to have it all behind me with your help, of course.
Well, let's just go back to the beginning. And I'm going to show people some of the correspondence you had. So the first you knew that something was going on was an email from this University Student Behaviour and Conduct Committee. I'm going to put that up there, and everyone will be able to see that, this letter reporting an incident and saying that you'd been accused of sexual assault. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Right, so I received the email completely out of the blue on a Wednesday afternoon. I was completely shocked to receive it. I had no idea what it was about. I was literally racking my brain for about 15 or 20 minutes trying to figure out, what this allegation of sexual assault could possibly refer to. And I was just trying to make sense of it. And all I could think of was that I said something offensive to someone at some stage, right? And words like sexual assault, they sort of get thrown around very liberally nowadays.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking for quite a while. I received the email on the Wednesday afternoon, as I mentioned, and it was asking me to come to this committee meeting on the Friday afternoon, right? So barely 2 days' notice, and it said very little about what the committee meeting would involve. It said that I could bring a support person if I wanted to, and it left it at that, right?
Yeah. And you originally said you would go, but you asked for more information, and then you got I'm showing the second email where they gave you a little bit more information.
That's right. So at first I said I'd go. I felt like I was under duress a bit, but you know, my rights to procedural fairness and due process were you know, completely violated from the beginning. So I wasn't told that I was being accused of a serious crime per se. I wasn't told that anything that I said could be passed on to police or law enforcement authorities. I wasn't told that I have the rights to not respond and say nothing, that I have a right to remain silent. So the university failed in so many of its duties to provide due process in the case.
Yeah. But they did. So you wrote to you said you'd go, and you wrote to them, and they came back and said the allegation was, they named the woman who'd made the allegation and said you'd, persisted. Well, I'll put this up here. Persisted in engaging with sexual contact with her at her home, despite being asked to stop. So that must have been a real shock to you.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, it took me literally 20 minutes to figure out what the allegation was referring to. I mean, I can go into details about what happened on the actual day of the incident, if you like.
Well, we'll go into that a bit later, because I've got some of the evidence from text messages between the two of you. But just essentially, the woman was alleging that you insisted you should both have sex and kept trying to put your fingers in her vagina despite her saying no. That's all you were originally told about what the accusation was all about.
That's right. And I was a bit worried that the way it was described was really ambiguous. So was I being accused of actual sexual assault or just attempted sexual assault? That was left up in the air, right? And I was quite concerned about that. Yeah, so I definitely wanted more clarification.
Yeah, and you obviously would have worked out you knew the woman, you knew you'd had a sexual interaction with her, but the way she was describing it was very different from the way you remembered it. Exactly right, yes. Yep. Now, I should say that I first heard about this through Claire Lehman. I'm going to put up her letters to the university. She is a wonderful woman who's editor. Yeah, she's a friend of yours, and she edits. I want to tell people she's an editor of a really good online, I suppose it's a magazine called Quilette. I'll put up the link to that in the low bar below the video. And I'll also put up, she did a recent interview with Jordan Peterson, which people might like to see, about how she got this online magazine started. She's publishing some amazing stuff about what's happening in universities and all sorts of very thoughtful discussion around a bunch of different issues. But Claire... Sorry, go on. Yeah, Quilette magazine. It's an amazing resource. It's one of the most valuable websites on the internet, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, and she's a friend of yours, and so she originally wrote to me and told me about you, which is how I heard about what was happening to you. But she also wrote to Adelaide University she's a former alumni, and put some very interesting questions, which we're going to show everybody, asking them, for instance, about the university's procedures for referring such allegations onto the police, and then how does the university protect due process of those who've been had those allegations made against them. Some very good questions, and I'm going to show then the response from the university, which essentially said that it's a decision of the victim whether the allegation is referred onto the police, although of course sexual assault can always be regarded as a criminal offence, has the potential to be regarded as a criminal offence, and that the university will only investigate to the extent that it will not interfere with any criminal justice processes, which is the great joke, of course. I mean, what in the hell is a student committee doing investigating a criminal offence? And how can this not interfere with criminal justice processes. So I thought interesting that Claire asked some very good questions and got these really feeble answers. David?
Yeah, very, very disappointing answers. And I suppose this whole incident shows massive overreach by the universities. I mean, why are they getting involved in the personal affairs of people who happen to be staff or students, right?
Yeah.
It might be a different matter if there's allegations of sexual harassment on campus or allegations of, quid pro quos between lecturers and students. But I mean, this has nothing to do with either of those sorts of cases. I mean, it's just something that has nothing to do with the university, happens off campus in someone's home.
That's right. But I mean, it is very much, as I said in my introduction, it's very much about the feminist campaign to get the universities involved in adjudicating these cases, because they're really unhappy. The juries tend not to convict in cases where you have a he says, she says scenario where her version of events is very different from his. Most juries are not going to convict young men in that circumstance, nor should they. And that's why this pushes on. Now, I led on a friend of mine, Patrick Casey, who's a criminal barrister in Melbourne, to try to help you a bit. We were very concerned about what was happening to you. And we have to thank him for, doing this for free, giving you some advice and trying to give you a bit of support and advice about how to handle this. So I'm showing everybody a photo of Patrick.
Patrick's a wonderful man, and very generously gave me lots of sound legal advice about how to handle matters. And in the end, I was cleared of any wrongdoing. It took 5 months from the time that I first received the allegations to when I heard the outcome from the university. 5 months, so obviously quite a while, and that's 5 months of depression and anxiety and suicide ideation that I had to cope with.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine how worrying it was. We actually had another student who happened to be on one of the committees involved with student administration and so on. I have my spies now, which is lovely. This is all part of me trying to get together a network of people to expose some of the things that is going on. So we had a student who was on one of the committees, and he pointed out, he produced some of the, I've got up here a sort of the student misconduct process showing what is supposed to happen in these cases in Adelaide University. And one of the things that emerged at that point, which was really worrying, is they show this whole information that he produced for us showed that they were able to withhold your degree, your PhD, if they felt you were not, giving them what they wanted in terms of the whole process. Because you were stalling on attending the committee meetings at this point, weren't you?
That's right, and having the ability to withhold my PhD, that's a tremendous amount of coercion that they were able to wield at their disposal.
Yeah, and what Patrick helped you put together a letter to them, which we've got up here, asking for a full account of the allegations and pointing out that under the regulations, you were required to be shown exactly what was being alleged. So that was important. So that sort of put them on notice, A, that you were getting some legal advice, and B, that you knew what you were talking about in terms of your rights. And then, of course, what I thought was very interesting, what suddenly emerged was the letter from the General Counsel at the university, which I'm also putting up here. And I thought that was fascinating, because clearly the university got nervous. If we look at this particular email from the General Counsel, she bends over backwards to point out that you have to be given procedural fairness as the respondent to the complaint, and also, you have to be given a detailed statement of the allegations as as you've requested. So we suddenly had the big guns getting involved and realising that the student committee was blundering in to a criminal case and didn't know what they were doing. I mean, is that how you interpret it?
Exactly right. So, I was getting these emails and requests, and I was given the runaround by, just two random university staff members who comprise this student misconduct committee. People with no competence or expertise in investigating criminal matters whatsoever. So when the university's most senior lawyer got involved, I breathed a sigh of relief, to be honest, that someone who was actually competent was taking over the investigation, right? So, being such a competent person, I felt more at ease that I was going to be given my due process rights.
And they were madly backpedaling. I love the fact that they suggested you access the university's employee assistance program for support. I mean, this was already months into the whole investigation, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. So it was too little too late. And, I even though, I probably could have used a bit of, mental health help, I just figured that they weren't going to give me any sound legal advice, and it would just be in my best interest to have this matter resolved as soon as possible.
Yeah. And then, but what else? The other thing that happened is they finally produced a more detailed description by the complainant of what she was alleging. And we're showing some of that here. Now, could you want to tell us a little bit about that, David, about what she was alleging and how that differs from your version of events?
Right. So in her official complaint, she says that, in the lead up to the incident, I was, pursuing her in a somewhat predatory manner, in a way that was, one-sided and unwanted and unreciprocated. But that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, like the whole lead up was, totally initiated by the woman. She gave me, several, unsolicited and unprompted invites to come to parties that she was holding and to come and watch TV at her house. Just to talk about.
We're going to show. I'm going to show them some of this. You've got all this. It's a Facebook. I can't remember what this was. Was it a
text messaging?
Sorry. Right. Yeah. It's from WhatsApp. So yeah, I've given you WhatsApp correspondence.
Yeah, and so we're showing her inviting you to watch Game of Thrones with her and flirting with you. I really wanted you to come. I mean, this is to a coffee date. It would be so nice and so on. I like you in just that way, but I have to be careful. There's no question this was a flirtatious exchange from her point of view. And then the actual evening in question, we've got the fact that she was the one who made the invitation. Oh, here we were showing, that she sent you some hearts.
Yes, hearts, which would be confusing because they clearly mean, I love you, something like that. When we had sort of explicitly said that we just were interested in something casual.
Yeah. And then she said you should come over tonight. So her suggestion that it was all one way, that you were pressuring her, that she was resistant, is clearly not true. One of the interesting things in this whole, in her statement was the fact that she says she deleted all her text messages. Well, you can see why. I mean, in a lot of these cases, of course, the use of text, the text messages are what can prove the story one way or another. And it's very interesting that a lot of argy-bargy across the world where feminists involved in, working on legislation in this area are trying to stop text messages and Facebook messages and, all these sort of social media exchanges from being used as evidence in these cases, simply because men are using them to defend themselves, as is true in your situation. I mean, it just seems to be really odd that she would claim she no longer has any of the messages, and you could actually clearly show that they prove that she wasn't being accurate about some aspects of her story.
Yeah, definitely. So the WhatsApp correspondence, our messaging correspondence, definitely contradicts a lot of things that she was saying that happened in the lead up to the incident in question.
Yeah, and just on briefly about the incident itself, where she alleges that that you pushed her into it, you suggested that you pushed on to her some sort of sexual activity. She was resistant. She made that clear. I mean, that's not what happened as far as you're concerned. Can you just tell us about how you experienced that?
So what really happened, on the night in question?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So in the afternoon, I got this message from her telling me to come over. Right. So clearly it was a sexual invitation. So I rocked up to her place at about 9 p.m. Her male housemate answered the door and let me in, and we were there, talking in the lounge for a minute. He offered to excuse himself to give us some privacy, but she said no, and she invited me into her room straight away. I was expecting to just talk for half an hour, but she invited me to come and sit on the bed next to her. So I sat on the bed next to her, and she just grabbed me and pulled me down on the bed and started kissing me. So we were kissing for about 10 minutes, and then I excused myself to go to the toilet. She got up and had a chat to her housemate while she was waiting, and then we went back in her room and got back to her. So we kept on kissing and touching and undressing each other for about 20 or 25 minutes, and then I performed oral sex on her. She seemed to enjoy that. She didn't mention it in her allegation at all, right? And then I asked her to reciprocate. She said, "My mouth is dry." So I said, "Righto." And then I went to touch her vagina with my hand, and she said it would hurt, right? So we kept kissing for a minute. She was touching my penis and sort of stimulating me in that way. And then I said, "Should I get a condom? Should I get a condom?" And she replied by saying it would hurt. So then I was a bit confused. So I said, "Well, did you want to use some lube?" And she said no. And then I asked, "Do you have vaginismus?" And she said no. So then it occurred to me that she just wasn't into it. I mean, that was a sort of, very, ambiguous and roundabout way of telling me to stop. So I said, "Okay, maybe we should just get dressed." So I got up, started getting dressed. I went and got her clothes and passed them to her. And I was very, very pleasant and civil about the whole thing. I wasn't angry at her or anything. But yeah, she was very apologetic. Like she was saying, sorry a lot, and then she said, this was on a Tuesday, and she said, on the Friday night she just met the love of her life, but he's got a girlfriend who lives in Spain. But he feels the same way about me, this and that, right? So I mean, I found it all very, very confusing, but I suppose that happens. But yeah, I was very, very civil and pleasant and respectful, and I thought that was, and then I went home, and I thought that was all there was to it. Then the next day, because I didn't want to put up with, I didn't want to manage all the confused messages and the uncertainty and all that, I unfollowed her on Twitter and Instagram, right? But reading her her complaints to the university, I think that's what probably tipped her over the edge to making the allegation, because she seemed to be really, really offended by that. And
the fact that you deleted her.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. No, look, David, I don't know. Obviously, we can't hear her side of the story properly, and that's not what I'm here for, to work out what the truth is. I think it's important in discussing all of this that you have a chance to talk about what you feel happened. But my real interest in this situation is the fact that this issue about the student committee, and what are the universities doing, or what is Adelaide University doing in allowing students to plough into as you say, a purely personal matter where it's your story against hers, and a very difficult thing for anyone to decide, and that, but an incident that has the potential to be a criminal assault, sexual assault matter, and they're blundering in, thinking that they can somehow determine what happened. And that's what I find extraordinary.
Absolutely. I've found it extraordinary as well. So, I mean, obviously, if someone feels that a crime has been committed, they should go to the police, right? I totally support that. Everyone's got the right to report, crimes that they believe have happened to the police. And then I would trust the police to run a very impartial investigation, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very, very experienced in these matters. Unlike random staff members of a university, right? They've got no expertise whatsoever.
And they, of course, could be, actually affecting the ability of the police ultimately to make proper investigation in this case by, blundering in the way we've described. Now, where we are, okay, so you've now got her more detailed allegations, but on the other hand, the General Counsel is involved and clearly giving the impression that you haven't been given due process, stressing, it would appear that she's taking over and saying this has to be handled differently. Now, what happened then?
Right. So, yes, a month later, the General Counsel got back to me with the official allegation from the complainant in writing, and the General Counsel was very, very clear that I've got the right to not respond if I feel that would be best, and that anything I say can be passed on to police, right? So, I mean, that's what she should be saying, because that's part of due process.
Yep.
So I read the official allegation. I mean, I was quite astonished that it was so different to what really happened. At first, I interpreted it very charitably, thinking that she just misremembered most of the events, but now I'm more inclined to think it was out of malice and vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I was just considering it for almost 2 weeks, and discussing it with Patrick. At first, Patrick advised me just not to respond, right? So that would be a wise thing to do from a criminal law perspective. But I just wanted to maximise my chances of just getting it resolved by the university as quickly as possible. So I just wrote a brief denial of the allegations in full, including the different interpretations, right? Because even at that stage, it was still quite vague whether I was being accused of, committing actual sexual assault or just attempting to sexually assault someone by, not stopping at the exact moment I was told to stop or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And then what happened? So
I sent a brief denial of the allegations to the General Counsel. This was around mid-December, right? So about 4 months after I received the first email.
Yep.
And then it was early mid-January when I received the outcome from the university, right? So as I mentioned, five whole months between receiving the original email and
what do they say?
In the outcome, they basically just said that in relation to any university-related matter, I'm not to have any contact with the complainant, and that's it, right? So, I mean, I basically take that as them saying that they've got no evidence or reason to think that I've done any wrong. No reason to believe the allegations of the complainants, and that was it really.
That was the last
correspondence you've had with them?
That's right, yep.
And you've since then been given your PhD and have left the university?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm very happy not to be involved in the university system anymore. I think it's sort of just in the grip of a massive ideology that has no relation to reality whatsoever. So I'm happy to be gone.
It's a very sad situation. What's happening to our universities is just one example, of course, of the way that people are prepared to overturn fairness and procedural fairness and also this whole question of what should the university be involved in and when do they poke at their nose in people's private business. It's just one example amongst many of horrible incidents I'm hearing from around Australia. But I'm really pleased, David, you were willing to come and tell us about this. And I think a lot of people will be really interested to hear about this. I'd particularly like to hear from other people and maybe this is happening across Australia, we don't know. So if there are other people who've had similar allegations made and investigated by the university, can you tell me, please? Because I think it's really important that we gather together evidence about the fact that the universities are pushing in this really dangerous direction. Anyway, David, thank you very much for joining me today. And I'm sure a lot of people wish you well and are very pleased you managed to wriggle out of this one.
Thank you very much, Bettina, and thank you very much for your help.
Pleasure.